Hi, my name is Cassandra Rambo. I'm a leadership development coach, and I help leaders that are in career transition. Either about to make that transition or you've made the transition and now you're in that, oh, what now moment. I did a post earlier this week on survivorship bias. And one of the topics that I do the most coaching and leadership development in and around, one of the most requested topics that I train on and coach on is imposter syndrome. Earlier this week, I did a post on survivorship bias, and suddenly the connections started to click for me that they're really two sides of the same coin. When we see others' successes, we often judge ourselves against what is an incomplete picture. So the survivorship bias comes from this incredible mathematician, Abraham Wald, Abraham Wald, and he was studying the aircraft that made it back in World War II that were riddled with bullet holes. And while everyone was saying, we need to reinforce where all these bullet holes were, he was saying, well, actually, the planes that didn't make it back likely had been hit in one of these fatal areas where there were no bullet holes. And so what does that long ago story have to do with where we are right now? We often don't talk about that hidden connection between comparing what is the intricacies in our bullet holes with someone else's highlight reel of their life. Just like those planes, we're only seeing the surviving leaders, right? The ones who appear confident and successful on LinkedIn or in meetings or wherever. But there's a hidden truth that we don't see. The doubts they face, the mistakes they've made, the times where they've felt incomplete or completely lost. So there really is this bridge between imposter syndrome and survivorship bias. And this is where imposter syndrome thrives, in that gap between what others see of us and what we experience ourselves. So we're comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. And there's also a lesson here in social media and comparing yourself to the life that you post on Instagram. So there's a couple of actionable takeaways that you can begin working on and implementing right now. The first is to start collecting your own data on your damage pattern. What challenges have you already survived? What obstacles have actually made you stronger? Second takeaway is this: reframe your perspective. Talk about this all the time. Cannot be overstated the power of reframing your perspective. Even if during the reframe you're thinking, this is stupid. No, I didn't survive that. That was clinging on, by my fingernails, like that little kitty poster. Hang in there, baby. But what I began to uncover as I was looking at my own damage pattern was the feelings of doubt that I experienced. It wasn't proof that I didn't belong or that I didn't do a good job. What it was actually evidence of was that I was pushing myself into new territory. So doing that damage pattern analysis first, and then working with yourself or with someone else that you know and trust to reframe your perspective, is a really powerful way to begin chipping at that wall of imposter syndrome. This tendency, and I am so guilty of this, of only sharing success stories contributes to how does our tendency to only share success stories on platforms like LinkedIn contribute to imposter syndrome in new leaders especially? Making that jump into a leadership position is a growth area, no doubt about it. Anytime you're doing something you've never done before, it's growth. Where imposter syndrome becomes insidious is when it's an internal dialogue that's going on constantly. And so when you're seeing only success stories of other incredible leaders, you can turn that inward and go, well, what's wrong with me? Why am I not soaring like this person? But as you reflect on your leadership journey, think about some of the visible challenges and the invisible challenges that you faced that people may not know about. And I'm going to start. One of my invisible bullet holes in my leadership journey certainly has been imposter syndrome, but underneath that has been codependency. My life was completely uprooted several years ago, and a large part of me getting back on track was admitting that I had a problem with codependency. Not codependent on any substance or anything like that, but codependent in relationships. And where that became my downfall was in relying on others to validate my own self-worth. This challenge probably wasn't visible to others, maybe to my management, some of my close friends and peers, but that taught me something crucial about leadership. And that is, when you're in a position of responsibility and authority, you can't go whatever way the wind blows, nor can you be dependent on external factors validating what you're doing. Now, don't get me wrong. There are KPIs, there are success metrics, feedback, very real, tangible, measurable items. But at the end of the day, when you look at yourself in the mirror, do you like the person that you see? What I love about that graphic that I posted the other day of the World War II airplane is you can see the bullet holes in two different ways. And this is what I mean about reframing your perspective. You can see the bullet holes as proof that you don't belong because you took a hit, or you could see them as evidence that you're growing because that plane didn't go down. Your plane didn't go down. Imposter syndrome is not a sign of weakness. It's a signal that we're pushing into territory where survival isn't guaranteed. Now, that is exactly where growth happens. Imposter syndrome is not a sign of weakness. It's a signal that we are pushing into territory where survival isn't guaranteed. And that's exactly where growth happens. One of the biggest things that leaders can do to combat imposter syndrome and survivorship bias is to create spaces where it's safe to talk about the planes that didn't make it back. I'm a huge fan of after action reviews. This was introduced to me when I worked at Fresenius Medical Care many moons ago. And it's a practice that I take with me to every organization I possibly can. It's this open way to look at attempts, failures, doubts, and to have an open, clear dialogue about